when she marks work and she goes, another, it was just a dream.
There aren't very many cheery TV twists, is what I'm picking up on here. Hello and welcome to The Best Ever, a battle royale for entertainment fans. I'm Morgan Jeffrey, executive editor at radiotimes.com, and I'm joined once again by a panel of guests. Each of them has come armed with an opinion. Their job is to convince me that their pick, and only theirs, deserves the title of The Best Ever. This episode, expect the unexpected as we debate the best ever TV twist. Joining me on the panel are star of The Traitors, Wilf Webster, and from Team RadioTimes.com, James Hibbs, drama writer, and Caitlin Mensa, entertainment and factual writer. Thank you all for joining me. Wilf, you were at the heart of some incredible TV twists when you were on The Traitors. What was it like to be on that side of things and to see the public reaction to a phenomenal TV moment?
It was weird because a lot of the time, nothing was premeditated by me. So I wasn't so the big twist where I first went for Alyssa at the round table, that was never planned. It was, okay, enough people, I could look at the table and see that certain amount of people were voting for me, but I knew there was other people voting for Alyssa. And I was looking about who I could convince to save myself, like who I could convince to actually go for Alyssa.
Yeah.
And then it had to be her. And that ended up a big moment, which was fun.
Yeah.
But at the time, you forget you're making TV as well. You completely forget. So then all of a sudden when it came out and everyone was going crazy and it was trending everywhere, I was like, felt guilty at the time, but you have to do what you got to do, right?
You've got to do what you've got to do on that show. James, you watch TV dramas for a living.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what are the ingredients of a great TV twist?
There's so many things. I think, first off, obviously it's got to shock. If it doesn't do that, then it's kind of doing nothing.
Yeah.
But it's also got to make sense. You know, I think sometimes a twist can come up and it seems shocking in the moment and you're sort of like, amazed by it, and then you think about it for 5 minutes and it just crumbles and it doesn't make any sense. So that's important. I also think the best twists sort of recontextualize what you think you've been watching. They change everything. So if you go back and you watch it, you feel like you're watching it fresh, you're watching it new because you've got new information, and then it also changes the game going forward. So it works backwards and forwards.
Yes, maybe they were like, I didn't realize Wilf was that ruthless, but he must have been all along to do that to Alyssa. And Caitlin, likewise, you'll have seen some fantastic shows with some fantastic twists. How easy or difficult was it for you to pick a best ever?
It was really difficult because it was a matter of whittling it all down because, you watch so many different shows, whether it's reality TV, dramas, thrillers, etc. And a lot of them do have some kind of twist, even if it isn't like major, but there's still something that, your jaw's dropping. So it's really difficult to find the one where I still think about it to today.
Well, don't forget, one of you will emerge triumphant today and will take away our coveted best ever trophy, unless we're planning a twist of our own.
Oh God.
No, we're not. You're fine. You're fine. So let's get into it. Wilf, in your opinion, what is the best ever TV twist?
So I had to cast my mind back I've seen so many TV series, and especially this year because I work for myself and I sort of do things when I want to. So I have a lot of time when the kids are at school, the wife's at work. So I like to have a little binge watch. So I was watching, and the thing I was trying to think about was what episode or series would I like to erase from my memory and rewatch? And for me, it was Game of Thrones. Like for me, Game of Thrones was like one of the best TV programs that's ever come out, if not the best. And it was the Red Wedding. So that is my pick. The Red Wedding, I just feel like you don't expect it. It's supposed to be a happy time. And everybody's sort of, you're with the Starks, right, at that time. I don't know if it's because it's the weather's so cold in this country. We're like, we're with the Starks. Like, we can relate to them a bit more.
Yeah.
But we're fully with them, and it's about to sort of become their power. They're about to become even more powerful and become an alliance with Walder Frey, and then all of a sudden, it's just like, that person's dead, that person's dead. And I think it's the fact that they just kill off main characters without worrying about it. And the thing is, I remember when you was in school and your teachers always say, don't make too many characters. I don't know if you remember, because it's hard to sort of keep stories going.
Yeah.
But they made so many characters
Yeah.
that it just was so easy to just kill people off.
The writers of Game of Thrones must have skipped that lesson in school.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But that's my one. Game of Thrones Red Wedding.
And that's season 3, episode 9, The Reigns of Castamere. Do you remember the first time you watched that episode and what your reaction was?
Oh my God, I was going crazy. And the fact is that I was a proper Robb Stark fan. So I was like, yes, come on, Robb, this is it. He's
Robb.
got married and he was having a baby and it was so beautiful. And then all of a sudden, everyone's just dead. And it was so ruthless. I couldn't believe that it got written and got commissioned. Like, and you're like, what, they just stabbed? I don't even feel like I can say it right now, but the baby gets murdered basically.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Obviously his wife or his lover gets stabbed in the stomach and it was just horrific to watch, but at the same time so engrossing. And yeah, I remember just thinking, I turned it off after. Like normally I binge watch and I love to watch it. Oh, what happens next? I just was like, I need a break. I need a break.
Yeah, you get that a few times with Game of Thrones where a moment happens and you go, I just need to kind of sit with myself now for a little. And it was the same with the Mountain versus the Viper, and that was so horrific. And afterwards I was like, I'm just gonna take a moment for myself, a few deep breaths. Game of Thrones was renowned for its plot twists, often involving an unexpected character death. Red Wedding wasn't the first one. We saw probably the death of Ned Stark in the first season was that first big shocking moment. Even Bran going out the window at the end of the first episode. Because they had set that precedent, did you in any way see this twist coming, or did it really take you by surprise?
It's strange because with Game of Thrones, you always expect something to happen. For me, it was like, I'm getting attached to this character, but I feel like they're gonna die.
Yeah.
So, but I just didn't expect it at a wedding. I don't know why. It just in my mind was like, oh my God, this is the first time where they're gonna get some kind of power and grow. And yeah, for me, you expect it, but then at the same time, you don't expect it. You're like, they can't possibly do that to Robb. Do you know what I mean? Like even Ned, when Ned, I was like, what do you mean? Sure, he's gone already. Like, he's a big actor. So I'm like, what? He's just been written out. Yeah, he's dead now.
I mean, Sean Bean, who always dies, so that one we really should have seen.
That weren't too much of a
coming.
shock. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he didn't want to be killed off anymore. Yeah. Like, I'm pretty sure he came out with a statement going, I'm not doing films where I'm killed off anymore.
I'm done. That was the last one. Do we think the best twists are the ones that genuinely just come out of left field and take us completely by surprise? Or is there something satisfying about there are enough clues that have been dropped along the way that we can work out the twist and we feel clever when we do that?
I think it really depends, because if it's like a death twist, then it kind of has to be out of left field, because otherwise, if there are clues and hints going towards it, then you're going to guess that ahead of time, and it's not going to be that shocking. Whereas if it's okay, we're setting something up you don't know, and you've got to try and work out what's going on in an episode, and then you want to have the clues, and then it's almost the thing of when you watch it back, you're like, how did I not piece that together? Those twists I love, because it's like when you watch it the second time, you're just like, how could I have been so blind? Basically,
it's tricky to get that right, and particularly with a whodunit, I think, where the answer has to be satisfying and feel real, and that you buy it. It can't come completely out of nowhere, because otherwise you go, well, how was I ever meant to guess that, right?
The biggest ones for me are when I don't see somebody die. I'm just like, straight away, he's not dead, is he? Like in Squid Game, when the old man dies and he's actually behind a wall, the camera, and you hear the gunshot go off. Straight away, I was like, he's not dead.
No.
I knew it straight away.
This is it. We're all so savvy now to these things. And because that was such a game changer at the time, but it was over 10 years ago now that episode aired, does it still have the power it once did, the Red Wedding? Or because we've seen so many imitators and it has had such an impact, has it lost some of that power?
Not at all. I rewatched it. We thought, was it just before Christmas? We was like, let's binge watch it from the beginning again. And it still get this feeling, because the Red Wedding, when you watch it, you have the main bits where people, like Robb gets killed, his wife gets killed, and these things happen. But it's the other bits that happen as well. So there's other bits that happen, like the Hound coming back with Arya just after, or escaping it when they turn up. Like there's other little things that help the narrative as well. So it still has the impact from the first time you watch it, but I still would like to delete my memory and rewatch it again.
Well, James, a very strong pick from Wilf, a man who knows his TV twists. That was one of the biggest, most discussed storylines in recent television history, certainly. Do you have something that you think can compete?
It's difficult because that is a really, really good twist. I think I've gone for a completely different sort of direction and a different type of twist, and I've gone for Black Mirror, and particularly so second season, second episode, White Bear. So to set that up, because it's a bit of a sort of a setup, is essentially you're following Victoria, a character you know nothing about, and she knows nothing about herself. She's got amnesia. And basically she goes through this day where everything is horrific. She's being essentially mentally tortured by all these horrific things going on around her. She thinks that everyone's been brainwashed by technology.
Oh my God, I've just clicked what he's talking about. That episode, it's so dark. Sorry, I just clicked. I was like, oh my God, it's that one. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So basically, they think everyone's been brainwashed because they're all looking at their phones, a lot of them, and they're just sort of watching with their phones. And then basically, at the end, you find out that that's not the case. This has all been set up for her, and it's essentially her own torture chamber, but also a sort of theme park, because she is someone who has committed a heinous crime. She and her boyfriend have abducted a child, and the child has then been tortured and killed. And so she, as her punishment, has been put into this sort of theme park where people will come and they'll watch and they'll film it and they'll sort of enjoy a day to watch her getting tortured, essentially. And then every day she gets her mind sort of wiped again, and she will relive the day.
There aren't very many cheery TV twists, is what I'm picking up on here. That one's an interesting one. Have you? I think in particular that one rewards a second watch. Have you watched that episode back, knowing what's to come?
I have, absolutely. I rewatched it last night in anticipation of this, and yet there are so many things where you're like, I don't know how I didn't pick up on that and didn't, I don't know that I could necessarily have pieced it together ahead of time, but there are lines where she's saying, she's telling you what's going to happen in the next scene, and you're like, how could you know that? But it's because she's living the same day over and over and over.
She has brief memories, doesn't she?
Yeah, exactly. And I think what I particularly love about that episode is that it kind of plays on everyone's sort of most critical opinion of Black Mirror, which is if people are sort of criticizing their show, they're just like, oh, it's just about the phones taking over and the phones controlling you and stuff. And then this episode is like, yeah, that's it, except no, it isn't.
Yeah.
The twist is, no, we're not being that silly. We're going really, really dark and going for a really sort of shocking twist, which I think it was the first time Black Mirror did a twist as well. And it sort of set the precedent for the show to do twists pretty much forever. All the rest of the episodes, except for a couple, have twists in them.
It makes sense as well, because I'm a big fan of Black Mirror, but I only really got into it probably about 3 months ago. I watched the Bandersnatch film when it came out, and I didn't find it that great, in my opinion. I thought it was okay, but I never went back to watch Black Mirror. I remember watching it, and it's all, like you said, it's all about technology, and there's no twist. And then that one just throws you off, and I'll rewatch it with my wife. So I was watching Black Mirror by myself, and then I was like, babe, I need to show you this.
Yeah.
And I love showing people a twist. I don't know about you guys, I love, especially when it's one episode thing or a film. Yeah. I love to go, oh,
you're
babe,
just watching them.
Just watch this. And you're like, oh, they
not looking
like
at the TV, watching their reaction.
Yeah, and my wife started getting really emotional. Like, she's quite an emotional person. She was like, I feel bad, but I don't feel bad for the person. But yeah, it's a great twist. It's a great one.
What's interesting about that twist is it wasn't originally part of the episode. The original outline for that episode was that it was exactly as it appeared to be, that she was just an innocent person. She was being tortured. It was an apocalyptic landscape. And at the last minute, Charlie Brooker went, what if it's all fake? What if it's all a setup and she's being tortured for some terrible crime? As you say, this sort of set the template, but Black Mirror, so many incredible twists. Quite often there's a twist where a character we're rooting for, the protagonist, turns out to be someone we really shouldn't be rooting for. I think Shut Up and Dance from season 3 is another great example of that, which again, just needed a moment to myself to kind of take a breath after that. What makes this one the best?
Well, I think firstly because it is the first one, because you really don't see it coming. Later on it's like, okay, what's the twist going to be in this episode? That one, you haven't had twists throughout, so when that one arrives, it's truly shocking. I think also the way it plays out, the fact that it's getting to such a heated moment, and then she grabs the shotgun, she's pointing it at one of the people, and she shoots it, and confetti just comes out of it. And the doors open, and it's an audience, and you think, is this a play? Like, what's going on? Like, it's so... The way it unravels, and then the way it makes you think about what you've been watching and what you would do in this world in which, there is sort of crime and punishment for crimes in a sort of theatrical way and in a way which is for the public and for consumers. It's like, it's such a dark take on our reality, and something which, and then also during the credits, you have the sort of replaying of the day, but from the perspective of the people putting on the show. It's just, there's so many layers to it, and I just think it's so shocking, and every single time you watch it, you're just thinking, how did I miss this?
Caitlin, has James got something here? Should you just step aside right now?
I think the best part about that episode is that it still kept you guessing, because even though, you know, when it's revealed that there is, you know, this live studio audience watching her, there's still a bit where you're like, what do you mean? What is happening?
Yeah.
Until like the very last moments of the episode. So, you know, I do think it's good. However, I do think that mine is better.
Well, we'll come back to you. It's fighting talk. There has been talk of a sequel to this episode, Return to White Bear, with Victoria Lenore Critchlow's character slowly, I think, becoming aware of her surroundings, that never-ending loop of punishment. Do we want to see it, or did the episode end perfectly where it should have done?
I think you only want to see it if there's a really good idea, because I think the great thing about Black Mirror is that it's the individual stories. And so, yes, I would be interested to see where she goes, but at the same time, he has to have such, and it would have to be a different take on society, a different take on technology, or whatever he's exploring. There would have to be a second story to tell there with that. It couldn't be a rehash of the same thing.
Caitlin, Game of Thrones, Black Mirror, two shows renowned for their jaw-dropping twists. But are you about to subvert our expectations with your own TV twist?
I think so, a little bit. So my TV twist, it's more in the comedy genre, which you wouldn't expect when you first watch this show. But it's the season finale of The Good Place with Kristen Bell, and as we see, you know, a character has died, and she is essentially put in the good place, which is their version of heaven. However, at the end of the season, spoiler alert, it is revealed that they are in fact in the bad place, and that all of these people who are there are actually all inherently quite bad people. Now, there is like a lot of nuance around like, oh, you know, I kind of saw this twist coming because it was so very obvious that they weren't good people, and, you know, Michael, who's in charge of it, isn't a very good man. But I think that's what made it so good, is that, you know, when you go back to watch the episode, it's like, oh my gosh, how did I not realise that these are bad people? You know, you've got Eleanor's selfishness, Chidi's Tahani's impulsiveness and things like that. It's like, oh, they do have all these terrible character traits, but it didn't kind of seem that this is why they were essentially meant to be put in this version of hell. So I do think that twist when Eleanor realises it, when they're all having this massive argument and they're calling each other all these names, and it's like, well, hold on a minute, these aren't the values of people who should be in the good place. And then it's obviously all revealed as this elaborate scheme. And I just think it's so good, because you don't often see comedy, you know, sitcoms in this way do a twist, because it is meant to just be, you know, fun loving, we can, you know, all have a laugh and we can watch it back, and, you know, whereas this one, it sort of keeps you guessing. And even when going into the second season, it always keeps changing. You know, they're doing more experiments, and then they're back to life, and then they're back in the bad place, they're back in the good place. And I think that's what makes that's what makes it the best twist.
Do you think a plot twist in a comedy, albeit a high concept comedy like The Good Place, do you think that has more impact? Because as you say, we're not expecting a sitcom to deliver these huge surprises.
Yeah, I think that's what made it so good, because, you know, when you first watch this season, you kind of see Eleanor, as we know, she's not even meant to be in the good place. You know, that very much is true. She is she's a horrible person. And so, you know, when she's with all these people, with Chidi, Tahani, Jason and Janet, it's like, well, why is she here? You kind of think there is going to be a twist. Are they going to find out that she doesn't belong here? And is it going to be they're going to make sure she goes to the bad place? But when you kind of find out that it's all of them that don't belong in this, you know, flying unicorn, you know, pigs flying place, you know, it's quite crazy. And I think that's what made it so good, because as I said, like, you didn't expect it. It's not what you expect from a comedy. You know, especially something that goes on for 5 seasons, you know, where the twists kept happening rather than it just being like a 1-episode shocker.
That's a great misdirect, actually, because you think that the jeopardy is that Eleanor's going to get found out, and actually there's something else going on. That was a twist, unfortunately, that I had spoiled for me. So it was one where I was watching it with my wife who didn't know, and that really was that kind of just watching her reaction, not watching the TV at all. And this twist, that Good Place twist, that wasn't just a surprise. It fundamentally changed the story and the shape of the show going forward. Do you think that's important, that a twist has that long-lasting impact?
I think so, definitely, because if, you know, we just found out this twist and then, you know, it didn't get greenlit for a second season, there are so many unanswered questions. Do they go to the bad place? What happens to Michael? What happens to, you know, Eleanor and Chidi actually do grow a romantic connection with one another. So does Jason and Janet. There are so many other plots that, you know, all work towards this, you know, the next season. In the second season, we do see that they all get this second chance to prove that they are good people and they can go to the good place. But twist, it's all another elaborate ruse. And again, you just don't expect it. You know that Michael, who's been like in charge of this whole thing, is the bad guy and he's like in charge of the bad place. And you kind of think, oh, maybe he's actually a nice guy and things like that, because, you know, as well as people have bad traits, you do have good traits, and we do see that come through their characters. But then in the end, no, they're still back to their old ways. They are still bad people. So it gets quite dark at the end, and you do kind of root for them. And obviously we see other characters introduced that are trying to help them become better people when they're back on Earth to get to the good place, but it just doesn't happen. And I think, you know, at the end of the show, when it ended, you know, we find out that there is no good place, there is no bad place, and I think it's a bit more, it becomes a bit more of a family show where you just find out that, you know, it's the people you meet along the way kind of thing, which I think was a good way to end it. Otherwise we'd still be like, oh my gosh, where do they end up? The good place or the bad place?
I mean, Mike Schur, who was the creator of The Good Place, actually said he was inspired by shows like Lost, which had so many great plot twists.
Oh my God, Lost, yeah.
He actually worked with Lost co-creator Damon Lindelof during the development process. And Lindelof's piece of advice for Schur was take the time to think about what you're going to do before you do it with a plot twist. Maybe speaking from experience a little bit with some of the twists that we saw in Lost. Well, Radio Times audience has also been having their say on this one across Facebook, X, and Threads. The results of our fan poll are in. We've got a top 5 according to Radio Times readers and users. So at number 5, it is a moment from Game of Thrones, but it's not the Red Wedding. The death and resurrection of Jon Snow is at number 5.
Oh my God,
with
yeah.
2% of the vote.
That is a great one.
It's a great one. At number 4, throwing it all the way back to the 1960s, you've got the reveal of number 1's identity in The Prisoner, which had 3% of the vote. At number 3, you do have a moment from Lost. It's the Lost season 3 finale. We have to go back, Kate. We have to go back. The flash forward, where you find out what you think is a flashback is a flash forward. That had 4% of the vote. At number 2, another classic, Bobby Ewing from Dallas, alive in the shower. A whole season of television erased in a moment. That had 5% of the vote. And at number 1, I have to say this was a surprising one. With 6% of the vote, is the ending of Newhart. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this.
No,
this is an American show. In the final episode, the entire series is revealed to be a dream, but it's a dream being had.
I hate that.
But it's revealed, but it's a dream being had by a character that the actor Bob Newhart played in a previous show. So it's like, imagine if
That's the end of Breaking Bad, though.
Is
That's the alternative ending of Breaking Bad. He wakes up and he plays and he's Hal.
You're right.
He's Hal and he's Malcolm Chad.
That's what that was referencing.
My God. It makes sense.
But like, it's like if like the end of Bodyguard, it all turned out to be a dream that Keely Hawes' character from Line of Duty was having the whole time. Mind blowing.
You know, my wife, she's an English teacher, right? And when she marks work, and she goes, another, it was just a dream.
That's what they tell you not to do. Yeah. Not too many characters, and don't end it by saying it was all
just a dream.
Yeah. Well, keep your eyes peeled to Radio Times social feeds for more best ever polls coming soon. But the time has come to find out which of you has convinced me that your TV twist is the best ever. Wilf, you argued that the Red Wedding was the best ever TV twist. James, you were backing the climax to Black Mirror's White Bear. And Caitlin, your vote went to the Bad Place reveal from The Good Place. Who is today's winner and the recipient of our best ever trophy? I think it's tough. I think they're all great suggestions, but I do think you can judge a good twist by its pop culture impact. And of these 3 twists here today, one, I think, had the biggest cultural impact. I think it shaped TV storytelling going forward. And it's for that reason that I'm going to say the best ever TV twist is officially Game of Thrones Red Wedding. Wilf, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm clapping myself. Don't clap yourself.
The trophy there, a parting gift for
Oh
you.
God, the haunted. Yeah, thank you. Feels great. I feel like I've robbed everyone else because they had some good twists, and I feel like I might have picked a bit of a generic one, but it is the best one, in my opinion anyway.
People make mistakes. I'm not going to blame Morgan. I'm not going to hold it against Wilf, but you know, I do think my choice was robbed today. I think White Bear, Black Mirror, that is the best TV twist. Game of Thrones, it's good. It's also a book twist, so you know.
I was absolutely robbed today. I mean, I think mine was just so nice and it was really like wholesome and it was something that nobody really expected. It's fine. It is what it is.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Best Ever. What did you make of our verdict and what do you think is the best ever TV twist? Let us know on X @Radio Times. We're bringing you new episodes of The Best Ever weekly, so be sure to head to radiotimes.com/The Best Ever for all the latest news and exclusive content from each new episode. If you're listening to the podcast, you can also subscribe and review The Best Ever on your podcast outlet of choice. That's all for now, but join us again soon for more of The Best Ever.